welcome to the One Life Podcast, where we talk about things from One Life Church, but ultimately things that we think relate to you and your one and only life. I'm one of your co-hosts, Sarah Inman. I'm joined, as always, by lead pastor and co-host of the podcast, Brett Nicholson.
Hi, Sarah. And I was just thinking, the last one I said I just got back from vacation. You had two.
That's true.
And I was just sitting here thinking, I think it's worn off already.
Didn't take long.
Because has that happened to you? I mean,
no, I enjoyed it. I think because I didn't go anywhere really. It was nice to just kind of shut my brain down for about a week. So.
I came back to a pile of work that had nothing to do with my work here. It was work outside. It was in my home and also doing another thing. And so, but other than that, I'm doing well.
Yeah, same here. And we're joined today by Joy and Travis Howard. Guys, thanks for joining us today.
Yes, glad to be here.
Terrific. And then we want to get to know a little bit more about you guys, hear a little of just your story, and just learn with you. But first, Brett, just give us a little highlight of what we've been doing on the podcast.
Yeah, what we've been doing, we decided to do this series called Racism, Listening and Learning. And it describes it pretty well, because just as that conversation has been highlighted all summer, what we wanted to do is use this forum to talk to people that have just unique experiences of those things that maybe some of us have not, and so we can increase our understanding. That's been the goal, and we've listened to people from different sectors. We've had business and church and police officer and others who have come in to just share their angle on it. And among other things, we'll talk to you personally, but also the Howards are both educators in our community, and we'll let you tell us more about that if you don't mind. One's at USI and one is at Dexter School, and so we're going to talk a little bit about racism in education and those things, but also, just tell us something about yourselves and how you grew up and a little bit about your relationship together and everything else.
All right. My name is, again, Travis Howard, and I'm currently serving as principal of Dexter Elementary School, an awesome school there on the east side of Evansville, and a great faculty and great staff there and great kids there. They are truly, truly amazing. And I've been married to this lovely lady here for a while now. I'm not getting to the specific years because she's going to hit me because I think it might be off a year. I think it's 15 years. And we have three awesome boys.
You think it's 15 years?
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Laughed,
Go ahead and confirm that. Joe, is it?
Yes, we're getting
well, she
real
hesitated
close
too, so
to a change.
15-ish. Oh, okay.
There you go. It's been an awesome marriage. And we have three boys, 13, 11, and 8. Jonas, Micah, and Kyson.
Right.
And they love football. They love trading football cards. They now are into fish. And they actually love Montana.
Into fish or into fishing?
Into
both.
Actually both. Yeah,
both. Okay.
We went fishing in Montana a lot. Over the summer, and they really enjoyed it.
I bet they did. Yeah, that's like fun. A whole different level.
A whole different level.
I bet. Yeah, that's fantastic.
To fish on the beautiful lakes and rivers.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty amazing. But we're just trying to be planted in Evansville, and that's kind of when we came back. We were here for a couple years, and then we moved back to South Carolina for 1 year. And then came back. And so this is our second stint in Evansville.
I got you. Now, is this where you met originally?
We met in South Carolina. We did.
Oh, you met in South Carolina. Okay.
Yeah, Winthrop University. Right. Yeah. Go ahead, my love.
Winthrop.
Well, my name is Joy Howard, and we've been in Evansville since 2015 when I got a job at USI. So I'm an assistant professor of education at USI. So, yeah. God has brought us here to work and to live and be in community with the folks here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's where the education thing obviously makes its way in. You're a professor of education, so that gives you a little bit more expertise than me, or especially Sarah.
Yeah, definitely not me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Thanks, Brett.
I just had to point that out. I don't know why. You're probably more educated than me, though, in other areas. So so we want to explore that, but we also kind of explore things, personally. And we've asked each person that's come on to just share their own personal experience of racism, but also as a couple, you're an interracial couple. So that has its own angle, which I didn't figure out till Joy told me. We're talking on the phone, and she goes, "By the way, I'm white." And then I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know how to respond to that, but I didn't necessarily know that because we hadn't met face to face." And so, but that adds its own angle to this entire discussion that I'm sure you have stories, maybe some you can tell or some Maybe not, but Travis, I'm gonna start with you. Just kind of growing up, we've asked many, like, what was your first memory of experience where you were like, okay, that was racism right there?
Yeah, I've thought about that question, and I would say, as I think about how my mom raised us, she did an excellent job. She really protected us and really not kept us in a bubble, but really just tried to allow us to understand that, we were great, we were awesome, we were going to college, we had all the skills necessary to be successful. So even in the midst of experiencing some challenging things in regards to racism, I'm just thankful that, I had a mom and a family that just said, regardless of what you're going through, if you got God in your life, you can make it happen, and so just so very thankful to have an upbringing like that. Yeah. And so in the midst of all of that, in facing some challenges, I was able to just have a really good, I was sustained, mentally, because of again, my mom's upbringing. Yeah. And so as I think about just one particular story, I was in 5th grade and I was up for, I think, a big award, the best 5th grade boy. We had the
best fifth grade boy was the award they gave out?
It was a thing.
Wow.
It was a thing.
Okay.
Times have changed.
Yeah.
You can't do that anymore.
So. Okay.
That's right. Best 5th grade boy. I forget the name of the
best 5th grade boy.
Oh yeah, of the exact award. Right. But I remember I lost it. I did not win it. And after I got the news, my teacher, who was an African American lady, she took me to the side and said, she said that I did not get it because the librarian, basically preferred white boys over black boys.
She just said that to you?
She did. My teacher, she sure did.
Heaven's sakes.
Yeah, and at that moment, I really did not understand the totality of that.
Right.
And I think she just was maybe just trying to share some insight as to maybe why I didn't get it. But even in her role, she encouraged me. Because in my yearbook, she put, when you become governor of South Carolina, I'm gonna vote for you. So I think that was her way of just trying to protect me and shield me. Sure. And even in the midst of that, I didn't understand all what that meant anyway. Right. It happened, but I didn't understand it fully.
So you didn't understand it. So you didn't stand there and get angry or anything. You were just like, okay, that seems a little strange, but I'm going to be governor. So.
That's right. That's right. So those were just, again, and everybody has their stories, but I tend to more focus on what people did to help me through the journey. I had many white teachers who encouraged me and who gave me the tools I needed, the extra study time, all the different things that I needed to be successful. And one gentleman in particular, he was an African-American gentleman. His name was Anthony Graham. He was one of my high school assistant principals. And man, he just took me under his wing and he made college become a reality. He just grabbed me down. He grabbed me in the hallway one day and just said, "Boy, who are you?" Brought me in his office and just mentored me for about 2 years. And he would call colleges. Wow. He would call colleges while I was in his office and say, "Hey, I have this guy. He wants to be a teacher. What scholarships are you going to give him?" And as a result, I had 2 scholarship offers. So again, we can focus on those challenging things, but I sometimes want to focus on the positive things that people have done and how God has used people to just propel my life. And
sure, yeah. Well, I'm glad you did, because that whole thing, I was whining about being over my vacation. I don't think I am. I'm all
excited to be here. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. No, that's really, really, really. Is that one of the reasons you went into education yourself?
Yes, because I saw the power of just how one person, if they take an interest in you, and if they see you as fully human, see you as someone that has unlimited ability, man, what can happen? And so, and he gave me a kind of a spotlight into how that could actually happen. And so it was cool.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Joy, I don't know if you can out-cool that.
Probably not.
Give a little bit of your background, and also being white, but also then you two meeting and deciding to get married. And if you don't mind sharing kind of what that journey was like and how that played out on the issue.
Yeah, so we'll kind of tag team this story a little bit. So I grew up in San Diego, California, which is a very, multiracial, multi-ethnic, multilingual environment. And so my upbringing was very much more like a colorblind mentality, if you've heard that buzzword.
Oh, sure.
And so just really thinking, racism doesn't really matter. We kind of made it through the civil rights era, and we're good for the most part. Like schools are integrated and, good to go. So I moved to South Carolina as Travis said, to go to Winthrop University on a softball scholarship in 1997. And so that's where we met. And just to put it in a little bit of context without going in too much depth into our story, the Confederate flag was still flying above the state Capitol building during that time. Right around the time that I started college, actually, sort of little known fact to a lot of people, Loving versus Virginia was the court case that didn't allow for us to be married, interracial couples in 1967, but it was still on the books in South Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Oh, you're kidding. Really?
Yeah. And in many states in the South. And so in 1997, when I went to college, South Carolina voters voted, should we leave it on the books or not? And so 32% of the voters voted, we should probably keep that.
32%?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
that no, this should never happen.
Right. Okay.
So that's the sort of historical context that I walked into, and I was like, coming from San Diego, like where everybody's just kind of doing life together, and then all of a sudden there's this very stark black white segregated spaces in the city and Confederate flags, and it was this new context of what is this?
Was that something you became highly aware of, or was that something? Okay,
yeah,
wow.
in a new context of not realizing that was still happening, outside of my little bubble that I grew up in.
So did you discover that as, okay, you're dating and you're thinking, hey, this is a possibility. This might be the one, and we as we go through that.
Yeah, we met in education class, and I somehow finagled to try to get a phone number, and we went to a Clemson football game. And man, I tell you, it was instant love, and we had a great time at the football game, and really, I mean, it was immediate. It was an immediate connection. We knew pretty immediately that it was a serious thing, in terms of our relationship, and both of us were living for the Lord, and God was truly in our relationship in a very powerful way. And in the midst of that, I still kind of had some racial things going on campus, in the sense that we were one of the only, I guess, interracial couples on campus that were actually walking together and holding hands and kind of doing some of that, and so that was a lot of pressure.
You didn't know that law was on the books, maybe.
Oh yeah,
It was just an unspoken.
Yeah, it was, sure.
Technically,
right.
It wouldn't have been enforced, but still,
right, sure,
but
it was still there. Yeah.
So anyway, so that was some pressure there. You had looks, and you had people asking me questions and all and all of that. And then I had one of my best friends at the time, and again, I'm only 19 years old. One of my best friends at the time said, Travis, I know you want to be a teacher and maybe a principal one day. And he said, if you continue to date interracially and date this white girl, he said, you're going to be blackballed. You're not gonna get a job in the South. You can just hang that up. And so if you think about that in the context of a 19-year-old, I'm like, oh, hey, listen, man, I just want to be normal. I don't want to,
Right, sure. Yeah.
And so kind of with that pressure, with all the different things that were happening, I broke up with her. And
really?
I did.
Okay.
I said, I just can't. Oops. I don't think I can take the pressure of having this weight on me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And so as a result, I ended the relationship, and it was very, very, very challenging. And then I let her take over from there.
That's perfect. This is a great story.
Yeah, we've been told we should probably make a movie at some point, or at least write a book. But we broke up, and I, as we were dating, I just was fully convinced, like, this was, because I had no plans to date. I was just doing college and just, was going to say, what do you want to do with my life, Lord? And then this guy walks into my life, and it was just very obvious that this is the one. Like, several things happened where that it was just like, this is the man you're going to marry. And so when we broke up, for that reason, I was devastated. And so I really had to start coming face to face with the impossibility of my colorblind outlook wasn't matching up with the reality. And because I knew we never had a fight, we never had conflict between the two of us. And so racism was much bigger and broader and deeper than I had ever been trained or imagined that it was. And so I had to go after, what do I need to learn? What questions do I need to ask? What am I missing here in thinking that racism is a conflict between two people, or just prejudice alone? This is not a problem between him and I. This is a much larger issue. So it spurred a series of questions and educational pursuit for me of, I need to figure out what race is, what racism is, what institutionalized racism is, and I need to start asking those questions on my own. And do a whole lot of learning. Wow. And so we broke up for 5 years.
5 years? Mm-hmm. Oh.
And dated other
this
people.
Story is very, I like this.
And took different routes. I moved back to California. Wow. Actually was engaged to somebody else. And he was dating someone else. Long story short, because I don't want to dominate the whole thing with our love story. 5 years later, I ended up breaking off with my engagement, and we ended up getting back together and really, coming back together, and ended up getting married within a year, and then moved back to South Carolina after we got married.
Yeah. So. And I think I would like to add to that story. God really showed me some very powerful. I call it he gave me a commercial. When we started talking again, I had an experience where God just really kind of downloaded some things in my life. And one of the things that he said, hey, that is your wife. Joy is your wife. And then he gave me Romans 12:2 about just not conforming to the world and been having a renewed mind. Yeah. And then he also just basically, told me just, you cannot worry about what other people are going to think about you. Yeah. And so and I have truly lived off of, that experience with him, since I still live off that today in terms of what I know to be true, that we just have to have renewed minds, and that we just have to listen to him. And I believe I've listened to him because my life with her has just been such a blessing. And I'm thinking, man, if I could have missed this because of somebody else's, beliefs or whatever, you know what I mean? And
sure.
So I'm so thankful that God brought us back together, and so thankful that I listened to the words that he gave me.
So you got back together, and has life struggled in that area for you once you did get married and you've kind of traveled through life? Has that been a kind of constant struggle, or has it been not as bad as you thought it would be?
On my end, it's been a blessing. I think because when God puts two people together, He knows what He's doing. Yeah. And I'm one of those people that believe that God has the one for you. Yeah. And so when you are with the one that you're supposed to be with, then even the challenges don't seem as difficult because you're doing it together. Right. And so in the sense of just kind of being black and being white, I think culturally, we had to learn some different things about each other, and just even, operating with family and some of that is, kind of was a challenge just because, her being introduced to my family and vice versa, there's some different challenges with that,
Right.
I think one of the things that we talked about was just, we had some family members to pass. My grandfather passed away, my aunt passed away, and so one of the things that she was just not used to was that we helped with the funeral, with the cost. That was a big, with the cost of the funeral,
Right.
because, just financially, we just, did not have the funds for someone to have all the things that you have to cover your,
Sure.
The death and everything. So that was one of those things that we kind of, as a little story. But
Yeah. So that was just a brand new thought when we were, first married and didn't have much money. And then, that happened. And so, my version culturally, but also racially, which are two different things, was you inherit money. When someone passes, there's an inheritance.
Sure.
You don't pay,
Right.
and it was like, what's happening? And,
Sure.
and reconciling the racial narrative around, death and inheritance and those kind of things, is absolutely a racial story,
Right.
that we had to work through.
I had a couple questions I would ask you, Joy, as you're saying that, and you were exploring a lot of this stuff in late 90s, kind of early 2000s. What's that conversation does it look different at all from when you were exploring and kind of understanding new things then, or is it similar?
Do you mean for me personally?
Yeah, for you
or
personally, but even when you were exploring at the time, and now people exploring maybe the same questions, maybe for the first time, because things have just, maybe risen up, unfortunately from some terrible situations, but obviously we hope some things change from that. Do you feel like those same conversations are still there? Or do you feel like it's gotten better?
I think they're still there. I think they've been there since the beginning of the country, and they're now rising to the top. And I think we're having these legitimate conversations, that is oftentimes, especially in the white community, very hushed and very, but that's not something we have to deal with. And now we have to deal with it, and so I see hope there. There's kind of a little bit of a pause of don't, think everything's going to change overnight, because we didn't get here overnight. But one of the hopeful things that I always like to tell my students too is racism is learned, so it can also be unlearned, and we can learn how to do better. So I think there's hope in that sense, because babies are not born with a racial lens. They acquire it because they're taught, and so there's hope in that, because you can learn to do better and be better.
And you said earlier, growing up, you kind of were in this colorblind mode, and people talk about that. Can you talk about that a little bit more? Because I think that's something I've heard, even some people still trying to figure out, like, is that okay? Should I think this way? Should I not think this way? Like, for you personally, as you were thought that way, it sounds like maybe not so much now, but.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
Definitely not now.
Kind
but
of giving some context to that, because I think it's something people are still processing.
So I think in those 5 years that we had broken up, it was, how God works in his own ways, right? And I would have been unprepared for having an interracial family, being the mother of 3 Black mixed race boys, if I had continued to hold on to this colorblind mentality, and which would require me to say when they face racism, oh, it probably wasn't that. Oh, you're probably making this more than it needs to be, and really listening and really being watchful and mindful, and even, in our own families or in, comments that we make or whatever, really, constantly exploring those questions of, is this situation because of race or racism? Is this place that we're going to, this store, safe? Are there signs I need to be like that boys is not a probably a safe person because they're wearing that symbol, or have certain words that they're going to say, and teaching them, how to be safe and being mindful, and also, saying sometimes I'm going to miss it. Sometimes I'm going to be blinded because of my own whiteness, because it's not directed to me personally, but I still, when anyone in my immediate family feels it, I got to listen and I got to pay attention and not just say that's probably not it. So in those 5 years, I think that was really important for me to do my own preparation and sort of soul searching, right, and relearning. So it's not all his responsibility to teach me,
That's good.
And having to do, I went back and got my master's degree in policy studies and language and cross-cultural education.
Oh, wow.
And then eventually got a doctorate in social foundations with a focus on race and racism in
wow,
education.
You liked him a lot.
Well, that question that I said, earlier, of this racism thing is much bigger and broader than I thought, and I've been troubled by that both personally and professionally ever since. Of this is not as simple as we like to make it, where it's just two individuals who maybe don't like each other. It's so much broader, and so that question has perpetuated so many questions in my life professionally as well as personally. So what I want to say is, in our conversations at home, race is a constant part of how we, if things come up for the boys at school, or if we have, certain spaces that we're traveling to, or whatever the case might be, we don't avoid the conversation. We just go after it. And and sometimes we have misled theories about this person said this, or, whatever. But
right.
So we're learning together, but we're never avoiding the topic, which is essential.
Yeah. I'm laughing because one of the funny things in Montana, when we go down there, my in-laws stay in a town of about 800, and I think there's only one other black person in the whole town. So when I visit, I'm the second one in the town. And so what I tell the boys is, hey guys, when we go anywhere, mom is like top dog. She just always goes into stores first. She always starts the conversations,
Yeah,
so
that's right.
it's a joke,
Sure.
But that's something that I have to,
right,
I talk to them about,
absolutely.
because I think it's important that, not that the space is unsafe, because I believe it's a safe space,
right,
but in that space, I just said, hey, I think it's just time for her to kind of take the lead a little bit and kind of go from there. And so just some of those sort of small nuanced things.
You better believe it.
Yeah.
Now, considering you've got your personal experience, and this is still kind of inform the question, but you're both educators, just from different angles. One and principal of a grade school, and then you're in the university setting. So, in the plainest terms, do you see racism within education? And if so, how does it express itself? And it may be completely different from your different vantage points. But if that's a fair question to ask, if you could speak to that, that would be.
You can start.
In so many ways. I mean, I think that we'd love to believe that everything's equal, when schools were integrated, when schools were desegregated, I would say, that they were truly integrated, right? And everything was an equal playing field, but we haven't arrived there yet. We hope to, but we're not there yet. And so it plays out in terms of school discipline. The data is there to support across the country. If you've heard the term school to prison pipeline, or school prison nexus, as I would prefer, school discipline in terms of expulsion rates and suspension rates are, there's disparate data in terms of along racial lines, right, of the types of punishment and the reasons for punishment, of expelling children from school, which has exponential ramifications. When kids are kicked out of school, what happens,
right,
to them. So this is a national and local issue that we're we're addressing. I would say also curriculum, what things get taught, what things don't get taught, and whose perspectives are driving, the great books that we're reading, or, whose version of history are we looking at, and things like that, or language that's used in school, and preferred language of what good writing sounds like, or speaking in classroom, in the classroom context of using, for example, African American language, or using, Spanish or a different language in the classroom, being associated with intelligence or lack thereof, right? So in multiple different facets of education, what gets celebrated and awarded versus, disparaged as not being good enough.
Okay.
Yeah. One of the reasons why I became a principal was when I was a PE teacher. I remember reading Educational Leadership. It was an article, and now this is pretty common, but to me it was just groundbreaking research where they were talking about that prison systems, particularly I think the states were Florida and Virginia at that time, that they were using the test scores of second and third graders to determine how many jails they were going to build. And man, after I read that
oh my goodness
research, I said, wow, I have to do something about this. And so that kind of propelled me on my journey to become a principal, because, at the building level, principals can impact, instruction and impact school culture. And so that has kind of driven my work and has always been in the background. And if you look at the test scores of second and third graders, some of the standardized test scores, you'll find out that African American students have some of the lowest pass rates, not as a lack of ability, but just for a whole variety of reasons, right? But with that being said, I wanted to go and be a positive impact on that work. And so as I'm doing some of the research that I'm doing now in my doctoral program, as we think about, Black boys in particular, Black males, research points out that, sometimes educators have lower expectations for African American students. The research points out that sometimes African American students don't get the same positive reinforcement and instructional feedback that maybe some other students get. So all of that kind of goes into the role that I'm trying to play, not only as a building administrator, but even as a scholar, to try to figure out ways to impact that in a positive way, to kind of reverse those trends.
And it sounds like you're the guy to do it too. Just with your background, with your attitude, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a journey.
From the time of your entry and into professional educating and until now, have you observed some of these things? And this is ongoing research. You noted that you're in a doctoral program now. Have you seen progress? Have you seen things that cause you to go, okay, we've moved the needle? Even if a little bit, we have a little bit, or are we going backwards?
Yeah,
you can say one way or the other.
Yeah,
it's okay.
I try to look at it through the lens of, honestly, just individual children, because it's too big in scope. So in my role as a principal, now I think my role as a scholar, and this is where, my wife as a scholar I think she has this large picture. And now that I'm kind of in my doctoral program, I'm kind of getting more into, this kind of bigger picture realm. But she is, the author of 15 plus articles,
oh, wow.
In national publications. And so she can reach a scholarly audience, where again, I am kind of boots on the ground working with kids every day. So I try to look through the lens of just every day. I try to look for that good thing that happens that's moving the needle forward, because there are good things that are happening, in schools around, just not only Black kids, but, all kids deserve a great education, and they deserve to be seen as fully human. Mm-hmm. I think that is the thing that, if I were to really, and my passion is just to see a child as a fully human being capable of great things. And at the end of the day, that's what the goal is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then Joy, speaking to it from your angle with, I don't think we added at the beginning that you had 15 plus published articles.
Probably more than that now.
Out of that, I mean, have you seen from your entry point to now, has there been progress? Are we sliding backwards? Are we about the same?
I don't do like large scale data. I do what's called qualitative research. So I listen to people's stories and do observations, that kind of work.
Yeah.
So I am interested in like finding those glimmers of hope and stories of success. And I think, there's pockets of hope and change. And like I said, if we can learn certain ways of doing it wrong, we can also unlearn and learn how to do better. Yeah. So I think there's opportunities. I think one really important thing in this work, just personally, spiritually, professionally, is, as Travis said, looking and intentionally staying focused on the hope, right? Because while there's this data to support, we're not doing well. Okay. We need to be doing better. Really focusing on, okay, where is it possible? Who's doing the good work? Where are those Black boys and girls achieving at high levels in their reading scores or in their, scientific experiments or whatever? Like, what's happening differently in those spaces, right? And how do we need to emulate those things? What are we missing in, sadly, the majority of classrooms, and so how do we learn from the experts? What are those expert teachers, those expert principals doing differently? And so looking for moments of hope and examples of joy. Not my name, Joy, but like,
I didn't
joy.
Go there, if I'm honest with you, yeah.
And learning and excellence, and what can we learn from those things?
And I think too, just, I think you've probably heard the phrase where when people talk about not having your zip code be the deciding factor on the type of education that you will receive. And so if we look at across the United States, I mean, it's, you can kind of look at any city and you can go to the nice schools and you can figure out where those schools are versus maybe the struggling schools and see where those schools are located within the city. And you can kind of go and be able to can kind of tell what school would be considered the good school or the school that is of needs improvement and those kind of things, So as long as the zip code is determining the quality of education, I think we have a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and we talked about this before, that we have a predominantly white audience here, and I think most, if not all, of the people that would even listen to this on purpose because they want to grow, they want to learn, they want to be a part of the solution. But with each, we've asked, okay, in this area, okay, what can I do? Is there anything that I can do in my life, or a direction I can move, or conversations that I could have that would help in any way? What would you recommend, just based on your experience, based on your education background, or whatever?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, kind of piggybacking off of my previous comments about just schools in general, and not judging schools just based upon a grade that is determined by a standardized test score. Before we say, hey, that's a bad school. How about go visit that school? Maybe go volunteer in that school. Maybe see that teachers are working their behinds off in that school to try to meet the needs of a community that has diverse needs, versus a school that might not have as much need, So that would be one. Just kind of, before you go and have that perception, maybe try to go in and actually help volunteer and kind of broaden your conversation. Again, I go back to having conversations like this and not being afraid to tell your truth, because a lot of times we're frightened of what that truth can sometimes kind of bring out, or the reactions that truth can kind of bring out. So, but it's okay. Just have the conversation. And if you and that person, and I just from a religious standpoint of view, or not religious, but from a spiritual standpoint of view, I just believe that the work of the Holy Spirit, man, it's an amazing work that he's doing in us and between us. And if we just activate his power, I think some of these issues can be resolved through his power and not through what man can do. You know, I think we sometimes limit his power in our lives just through some of the things that our beliefs and our thoughts. And it's just time that we submit and allow him to do the work that he says that he will do in the word, right? He said he will lead us into all truth. Yeah. And so I think that's kind of what this thing is all about, is really yielding to the Holy Spirit. So there's really nothing I can really tell you that can help us all. I think it's truly a yielding, and then as a result, he will then give you strategies and ideas that can move the needle forward.
That'll preach. Yeah. See, ladies and gentlemen, the Travis Howard Show. There you go. That's right. You heard it right here. You got any follow up to that, Joy?
Yeah. Travis said several times, seeing children and seeing people as fully human. And one of the long-standing from early childhood to today that has been constant is some version in me of Genesis. We are all made in the image of God. And so if we really believe that, then when we have differences, and this is definitely across race, but it's, across any difference, if we really believe that and hold on to that, and we're made in the image of God, then how can we reconcile some of these differences? How do I get, move through relationship and in conversation with somebody else who is made in the image of God, but we're looking at this world through very different lenses. And again, as Travis said, letting the Holy Spirit do that mediation and help you navigate how to see things differently. Like, what am I missing? Help me understand this better. And so, for us white folks, it's doing a lot of listening, but also a lot of our own work on self and saying, maybe I missed that. Maybe, like we gave the example, for instance, about the funeral differences of how that plays out differently in our families. Well, maybe it's not, maybe there's something more to this story that I am missing, that I'd never considered before, how it could be viewed very differently because of race, and what do I have to learn, and just really asking God to shed some light on that. And humble ourselves to listen better.
Absolutely. That's a great conclusion in some ways, because when we first started this journey as a church, the passage that I pointed to is in Philippians 1, where Paul's praying for the Philippian church. He said, I pray that your love may increase more and more in knowledge and depth of insight. And so we grabbed hold of that, made our prayer, but then we said, how do you do that? Well, it's primarily through listening. And so that's been the posture. And I love your line of just humble yourself and listen. And I think that's the overarching conclusion among all the different things we've learned from so many and from you guys, that that's really what it comes down to. It's not any more complicated than that. It's not easy sometimes, but just be curious, listen, and again, humble yourself and be willing to say, okay, I may have been looking this not so well, and I'm going to adjust how I view things, and then maybe go down to the local elementary school that may be struggling and volunteer and impact someone's life, like you said that gentleman did for you. So that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and again, I said this, I don't know if I said this when we started recording or not, but some of my favorite things about these episodes are just getting to know people, and I love hearing your story, and I'm looking forward to the book or the movie.
Right.
Really, I'm genuinely love just hearing like the information that you have, and you spent time obviously researching and continuing on in education, and really thankful for you guys spending some time with us today and sharing with our audience, and we're really thankful just for you to be able to come and share with us. So thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you guys. We appreciate it.
It's been great.
Yeah, for the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. And we will we want to continue conversation in a bit. Brett, I know that you said that we want to do kind of another episode of just continuing to talk even what we've been learning as a church. And so what I'd ask for anyone who's been watching through our series, anything that you've learned, email us at podcast@onelifechurch.org. We'll love to read those and just kind of learn together, continue to learn together. So anything to close with?
Yeah, we're just going to, next time, we're going to summarize what we have been through. So it would be great to hear from anybody. Just post that, send it in an email, and we want to summarize so we can kind of collect up the major points that we've heard, because there's been threads in everything that everything that the different people have said. So that's been very instructive and helpful. And so that's our goal for our next episode.
Absolutely. Joy, Travis, Howard, thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you.